All right, let's have a chat with our mate over in the UK, Joseph. This is going to be very fascinating. I'm particularly excited. I can't wait to hear what insights are going on over there. He's an interesting bloke. We've got similarities. We've got a lot of similarities in that, young, passionate about conservatism, probably Christian. I should ask him that, I guess. But yeah, no, I'm particularly interested to see exactly what's going on in the UK and potentially how we can subvert it. In the UK right now, they're at a weird stage where they're about to roll out the boosters, but they're also about to roll out the mandating the jabs for the kids. And I'm really curious to see how they battle that because, they're going into winter. Hey, there he is.
How's it going, Joel?
Joseph, my pleasure.
Good stuff.
I was just introducing you to the audience. So we've got similarities. We're both young. We're both conservatives. Christian?
Yep. Same over here as well.
Awesome. Anglican, I'd presume.
I'm actually Catholic, so I'm one of the few over here who's he's not going along with the C of E at the moment. But they've just started preaching a new agenda at COP26. Everyone's kind of beginning to look around for alternatives now.
Yeah, the Catholics aren't in our good books right now because in New South Wales we have a Catholic premier, head of our state in New South Wales. And yeah. Not enough kids. He's got 6 kids, but I mean the guy's just not governing, in a way that is befitting, I guess, a Christian right now. And
right.
It's a bit frustrating. But I wanted to bring you on. First off, I want you to give me a quick introduction about what you're about. But we eventually want to get into what the hell is going on in the UK. I think the audience is going to find it very fascinating, and also if you want to hear about what's going on in Australia. But the floor is yours.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we've been watching with interest as to what's going on over in Australia because obviously things aren't great here, but they're certainly not as bad as you guys have it over there. But yeah, a bit about myself. So I run the Orthodox Conservatives, which is a think tank over here. We have been working with the Conservative Party sort of within it in recent sort of couple of years to basically promote social conservatism and a return to kind of more Scrutonian kind of principles and stand up for the people within the party who don't really have a voice on that front. And then more recently, I've kind of branched out into some media stuff. Also run a company called Surge Britain, and we've just launched an announcement with Getter, the US social media app, that we're going to be running something called Counter Conference in December. So that's going to be our next big project, and we're inviting everyone there. I mean, anyone you can imagine from the UK. Quite a few big names. We've just confirmed, although I'm not meant to tell anyone, but we just confirmed Jack Posobiec to come over as well.
Wow.
Potentially Mike Pompeo as well. We'll have Jason Miller there from Getter. So it's going to be a great crowd. And then over on our side, we're going to have Farage, Lawrence Fox, Calvin Robinson, Alice Grant, a few others as well. So it's going to be good stuff on both sides of the Atlantic. That's on December the 8th. So the reason why I'm outside actually at the moment is because I'm just about to go on a site visit to see where we're setting up for that. But yeah, that's enough about me. And yeah, I mean, we also, as well, just to mention, we also have ties obviously with Turning Point from the group that I run. So we've got good association with Jack Ross, who I'm sure you know. And yeah, we're looking forward to this conversation because there's a lot to unpack, I think.
That's really exciting. I mean, so you said you're looking at a site for a potential, for the conference to happen there. Yeah. I pray that you actually do get to do that.
Go ahead with it.
Really,
yeah.
We had a bunch of people lined up for Turning Point that were hoping to tour near the latter half of this year. Big names from the US and the UK. Unfortunately, had to pull out because of obviously it's Australia, and they we decided to go full fascist on our people. So I smile about
kind of crazy.
Smile, I'll cry. But no, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see the big names that go out there. Did you say possibly Pompeo as well? Mike Pompeo at that conference?
He's not confirmed, but yeah, he's one of the names that we've been talking to. The others I mentioned are all confirmed. And then there's going to be good interest because obviously Jason is Trump's former advisor, so he's got a lot of pulling power over in the States. Um, yeah, we just heard actually, I mean, from a friend that an MP has been apparently saying that they're looking at what they're calling Plan B over here now, which is essentially the
Oh,
reintroduction of masks and some other introductions of restrictions. And apparently that's going to be coming out straight after COP26. So this is kind of the next stage, I guess, is combining COVID with climate. So that's that's their focus in the near future. But it's not looking like they're going to shut down venues. So we're having to deal with sort of having tests on the door and that kind of thing. But for now, it's looking like it will go ahead. So yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I'm a bit worried about that. That change from COVID to climate change. I think we've all sort of, those of us that have sort of been clued in, have sort of seen where this is going. Over in the UK, though, you guys had a pretty quick uptake of the jab. I mean, don't get me wrong, Australia has been the fastest, but you guys were one of the early ones.
Yeah.
What's the debate there been? Because even people like Nigel Farage have been, you know, sort of like, you know, with the first rounds of jabs, he was just like, I just want to see this get over and done with, you know.
Sure. Yeah. So I think it's a mixture, right? So in the constituency where I'm from, which is actually a Labour stronghold, we didn't have a great vaccine uptake. So I mean, there was a lot of there's a lot of ethnic minorities there who are suspicious of the government rollout. I think it was at one point, I think it was about 33% of adults. So it wasn't high at all. And obviously the official numbers are much higher now. I think we're up to about 86% or something for the whole of the country in terms of adults. I don't know how many of those are legit, because a lot of the people I talk to, maybe they've taken the first jab but not the second, or they're just hesitant to take it altogether. So firstly, I don't know how sort of accurate those official numbers are. But the second point, I think, is that the debate is more about the passport than the vaccine. The vaccine at the end of the day is a matter of personal choice. It's more about when the state starts coming into your home and saying, look, we're demanding evidence of your medical status. That's what people in this country just will not take. I mean, there are a lot of people who think that that's a good thing, but they're definitely not the majority. I mean, you go out and talk on the street, most people would still want that liberty. I think that's where someone like Farage falls. As far as I'm aware, he's probably been vaccinated. I think quite a few of them I know have. But they would definitely die for the right for not introducing mandatory passports. That's the main consideration. And I don't know if you saw actually, but I'm going to Wales next week, where the situation is even worse, because they are voting on reintroducing passports for a longer period in the hospitality industry there. So there's a few pockets in the UK where it's certainly worse.
Yeah. Why Wales? Is it like a state per se? I don't know the UK that well.
So you've got a leader over there called Mark Drakeford, and obviously you've got Nicola Sturgeon up in Scotland. And they are, because of sort of devolution, they're kind of more in control of their powers. They are meant to fall under Westminster legislation on a lot of things. And there is a kind of debate as to whether or not what they're doing is totally illegal. I mean, in my eyes, it's not even a debate, but for the legalists, it's kind of debate. And I think the problem with that is you've got, well, let me give you an example. So I think it was November last year, we had a lockdown. I went to Wales to stay with family, and in Wales, there was no lockdown. So I was going between England and Wales, which is, I mean, you can do it, you know, in a car in 5 minutes. And I was staying in one country without a lockdown and coming back into another one, which was supposedly a lockdown. So the restrictions themselves are kind of very odd. I mean, I think it's almost like a power grab from the devolved leaders. So they see it as an opportunity to kind of push some weight around. Sturgeon's been pushing Scottish independence for quite a while. So for them, it's almost like a little coup where they can hold on to some kind of power and throw their weight around a little bit more, I think.
Right. I'm curious, and before I go on, guys, please click this drop down here and click follow for Joseph, because whatever happens in the UK is going to come to Australia. Don't get me wrong, Australia's pretty bad we're leading the world with the authoritarianism, absolutely. But when it comes to the next step, the booster jab, the mandates for the booster jab, and how they push this on the kids, we're going to be looking to people like Joseph to be letting us know what happens. So go click that right now and follow him, because he's just started this new account on Instagram, and I want to grow it as quickly as possible, because it'll act as a magnet for a lot of the people in the UK to also follow. His following on Twitter is much, much bigger, I promise you. But it's a new place Conservatives are sort of
Also, for everybody, go follow me on Getter, because that's where it's going to be happening.
yeah.
We're pulling a lot of people off Twitter onto Getter at the moment because it's just open free speech. There's no censorship. There's nothing happening on there. And it's run by the right people. Like I said, Trump's former advisor is the CEO. So if you want to spread more conservative opinions, get on there. We'll definitely
In Australia right now, we haven't quite, sorry to cut you off, we haven't actually quite moved on together. A lot of people have heard about it, but the best place we've gone to for the censorship stuff has been Rumble as an alternative to YouTube, but also Telegram, because a notification every time. But absolutely, I'm looking for, if Getter is really taking off, I will absolutely push people onto there as quickly as possible. But Telegram's got some healthy growth. But
Telegram's really good. Yeah.
I want to get your thoughts. So this is one of the really valuable things I want to get out of you from this interview. What's the psychology at right now in the UK? Okay, so we've got, and correct me if I'm wrong, so we've got them pushing booster mandates at some points in some professions, and you guys are going into winter. Are they also making, have they dropped the age for mandated jabs for kids? Like, are they going below the age of 16?
Yeah, so they're pushing now to reduce that age quite rapidly. Over in the US, the CDC has just approved for, I think it's down to about 5 or 6 years old. What we tend to see happening is that the US and the UK are interchangeable with the way things work. Biden and Boris are obviously, whatever else, they're tied into the Build Back Better agenda, which is something they've been pushing unilaterally. And I think that's also part of the rollout for them. It's about seeing how much they can get away with. Funny you should mention psychology. So over here, I think the government have been a little bit more open, if you want to do some research on the tools that they're kind of using to push this narrative. I wrote an article coming on for, I don't know how long ago, probably about 8 months. And I was exploring a report from 2019, which is something called Mindspace. And that's put together by NerveTag, who are one of the advisory boards, are a little bit like Sage. I'm sure you've heard of. So that's actually a team of behavioral psychologists. And in that, they were talking about how the government needs to kind of help the population with its health and other things by sort of using psychological tactics. And the quote that stood out to me from that was, people have a fundamental dislike of being tricked. However, this is fundamentally an issue of trust in their government. Now, that one line there kind of tells you all you need to know about the behavioral tactics that are going on in the government over here. It's very Orwellian. I mean, it's almost like something copied out of Animal Farm, but just without any of the humor. And that's kind of what we're seeing, really. I mean, every time something gets pushed, even if it's already been refuted scientifically, so with social distancing, with masks, whatever else, that the same leaders were saying were worthless a year and a half, 2 years ago, they'll now push as though their life depends on it. So they're doing the same with the vaccine, even though that they know the infection rates are actually worse at the moment in the vaccinated than the unvaccinated in some parts of the world. They're still claiming in some cases that it reduces transmission, which is just clearly not the case. So I guess the point is that we can't really trust anyone over here. And that's a big problem for people, because we have a culture built on trust. We're loyal to the monarchy. We tend to be loyal to whatever government is in, even if we dislike a lot of their policies. There's a kind of patriotism. And for a lot of people, that's been broken down. So I think the psychology behind now trying to mandate vaccinations for children is kind of a tipping point for a lot of parents. And they're really beginning to question now. Yeah.
They're really starting to arc up. And I first sort of tapped into this. I noticed the pattern when I was watching the UK for a different topic. It was the critical race theory. I started to see the mothers over there start to arc up and be like, hang on, husbands wake up, parents wake up. And you'd see all these videos of them speaking out against their school boards saying, hey, like, this is a problem, guys. You can't be teaching this pornography and this
Sure.
critical race theory in our classes. This is not okay. This sex ed isn't okay. And
Yeah.
I saw, it's like the, yeah, never get between, you know, a mum and a child, because
Right.
that the power of that, it can't be understated. And I've been watching that.
Right.
And so I thought, okay, it seems as though the USA is really pushing back against that as well with the COVID stuff. So you've got the masks, you know, these videos of these kids being encouraged outside their schools by their parents to go into school without their masks, like going in, and, you know, you're seeing this wave of shortages in America because they're seeing what's going on in Australia and in other countries, and they're resigning from their jobs. They're saying, hey,
Right.
you can't do the job without us. Okay, no worries, we're out of here. So you see like a third of, you know, the workers on a plantation, or, you know, all these flights being cancelled because the pilots are walking off the job. I was like, this is beautiful to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, do you see the parents, do you see the mothers of the UK actually, you know, rising up against these mandates?
Yeah, so I'm working with a few different people right now, but one of them is obviously Lawrence Fox, and he's been very outspoken about this. He's got children himself, and this is one of the things where, you know, you cross the parent and you really begin to, you know, wake up the population. And like you said, the critical race theory was another thing. We had a good speech from Kemi Badenoch, I'm sure you're aware of, in Parliament, sort of stating that it was illegal. We've got Calvin Robinson doing some good work on GB News as well, sort of putting forward the idea that critical race theory is creeping into every aspect of the classroom. And my own group have been doing some research recently, also looking at Ofsted, who are the kind of the board that regulates the way exams and the way quality control is measured in schools over here. And I mean, the ties with groups like Stonewall, with Black Lives Matter, I mean, it goes so far down into the pits you wouldn't believe. And that's a big issue. Education over here is a big issue. But I think this issue, the vaccine issue, could actually be the one that gets people to look at those with a little bit more clarity. And going back to another point you made about how they're pushing this, I mean, care home workers have been mandated vaccination over here. And I think we saw a loss of something like up to 6 million people from the sector. Or it will be that over the next few months, because they're now talking about mandating it for all NHS staff. And of course, when people think about NHS staff, that's not doctors. I mean, that's doctors, that's, you know, nurses, but then that's also all the admin staff as well. When they say mandating vaccination for the NHS, they mean, you know, blank cart, everyone. Sajid Javid is very intent on pushing this.
That's your health officer. That's your federal
He's
health.
our new health minister. So he's always had a reputation for being libertarian. I can tell you he's not. I was at a dinner with him about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and that question came up: how are we going to replace these care workers? How are we going to get more people in, because they're leaving their jobs? And his flat response was, if they're too lazy to take the jab, they can sod off. So completely callous, not thinking about people losing their livelihoods, not thinking about the long-term impact of that, especially on sectors like the mental health sector, which are already massively understaffed. He is very, very adamant on pushing this at all costs. We've got rising lists of cancer patients dying. We've got rising lists of mental health patients committing suicide. I mean, the situation behind the headlines, which is all about COVID, is pretty bad in terms of health. And I'm sure it's the same for you guys as well. Will be soon when the numbers start to be released.
One of the early indicators that we saw, one of the early studies, was a private study that Measured Nawaz highlighted, and he's one of the left-wing voices. Measured Nawaz from the UK on LBC Radio, he showed this study which basically said that something like 500,000 people are going to be basically, you know, over the course of the next few years, die because of the effects of the first lockdown. I mean, that doesn't even go to talk about the international deaths, the starvation. I think the UN early on in the pandemic said that the first round of lockdowns in the West, they're actually going to lead to over 200 million deaths due to starvation around the
The
world
third
because
world. Yeah, absolutely.
you know, like this is madness. What are we doing? And you know, to put things into perspective, this is a virus that, you know, it's 0.97%, you know, a survival rate, a 99.97% survival rate across the
Yeah,
board. It's
yeah.
insane that we're breaking our legs, and it's like, guys, are we going through a crisis of conscience right now where we forgot that death is a thing? Is this like an atheistic thing where you forget that there's no, like, you do everything you can to save yourself because you don't realize that there's an afterlife? I mean, what's going on, man?
It's interesting you mentioned that. I watched a good video. Can't remember who it's from now, but it was being circulated quite a bit. It was on mass psychosis, and it was looking at it from sort of the Freudian perspective of mass psychosis. Now, I've got a few problems with Freud, being a Christian, but I do think that the psychological observation that was made in that is something which has been repeated through history. So it happened. I mean, it happened in Nazi Germany. People were going along with restrictions because it didn't seem so bad. It didn't seem so bad, you know. And you know, this might be quite a controversial statement, but Hitler was doing good things. He was building up the economy. He was you know, providing for people who had a certain number of children. He was doing things that on the surface level seemed, why wouldn't you want that, you know? And because of that, what you begin to get is a blind eye being turned to other things like exterminating an entire race, or you know, trying to get rid of a few people because it doesn't affect you directly as long as you're not one of them. And we're seeing the very similar kind of problem here. We've had the furlough, which is basically where the government's been playing trillions, well, billions, probably trillions, over the neck, over in knock-on effects, of money that is essentially printing or borrowing back into our economy to keep jobs afloat without employers being able to actually pay their employees. So we're becoming more and more reliant essentially on a massive state welfare system, which in turn is now coming back to bite us in the form of ever increasing taxes. I mean, I can't remember. First of all, our tax rates are higher than they were after the war. Secondly, we're getting like a new tax announcement every week at the moment. There's normally one a quarter, max. So we're beginning to see where this is leading, and it's not pretty. And people are still willing to turn a blind eye because they think, if we get locked down again, we'll be back on furlough. It's free money. I mean, we only get 80% of what we'd be paid normally. At least we get to sit home and not go into the office and not do any work. And, you know, I just think it's crazy at the moment. Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh, it's madness, and it seems as though you're going into the period of time just before Margaret Thatcher came in with those taxes, something like 70% corporate taxes. Like it's insane.
We're going to go higher though. We're going to go way higher. I mean, it's funny because we always used to look at the US and think, I wouldn't want to start a business there. I wouldn't want to be a billionaire there. I lose half my wealth instantly. I mean, they all find ways around it, but over here now. It's like, well, you start a business, you're basically going to be sending back, you know, most of your paycheck to the state. Why would you want to start a corporation? Why would you want to be a startup? And I think that's another key thing that we're not talking about. With the whole of this globalist agenda, what they're trying to do is they're trying to open that trapdoor halfway down the pyramid. They don't care about the people at the bottom, and the people at the top are secure. It's those middle corporations. It's the small businesses with a few million in turnover, with someone who's sitting quite well off, comfortable, probably a community leader. Those are the people they're trying to get rid of because they want the big corporations to be leading. They don't want small businesses to be taking off. And that's one of the biggest things for myself, being quite entrepreneurial, having run a couple of businesses. It's scary looking at that because there's not going to be many opportunities for those small businesses in the future.
What are things like with the China front over there? Obviously, you know, you guys were a little bit late to the party and realizing, I mean, your prime minister was anyway, late to realizing that maybe you shouldn't have Huawei, you know, involved with your 5G rollout. What's your thinking with Chinese infiltration into the universities and all of that?
There's a mentality over here of trying to shift blame because the problem is with our government, it's so bureaucratic, and there's so many people involved in each decision that generally, like you said, it comes too late. We've had a similar thing going back to that point I made on education with Stonewall. I mean, Stonewall have been outed basically as a bunch of paedophiles, and that is not something that could be publicly taken responsibility for until very recently, because so many government institutes, so many boards were tied into receiving advice from them. It's like, look, if you point out one, the whole thing crumbles. So we're having a similar kind of thing right now, I think, where the governments are unwilling to state how much infiltration has taken place. There was a thing done by Nigel Farage a couple of months ago where he spoke about, in some schools there was overt CCP propaganda being taught to children, because on the board there were a number of parents who were involved in the CCP party back home, and it's almost like no one made anything of that. It's like nothing happened after that was released as information. I mean, there's a statistic, I don't know how true it is, but I'm sure it's probably quite true, that all the lights in London could go off if basically one or two Chinese billionaires decided, simply because they're in control of the supply. And that's the problem we have, not just with China, but I mean, we've got Japanese energy supplies, we've got French water supplies, we've got a lot of, problems here in terms of our sovereignty, because we're beholden to too many different countries, and China is probably the worst out of all of those. Having said that, we moved a bit quicker than the Americans. So certainly with the Huawei situation, I mean, Trump obviously cracked down on that on TikTok. But we do have a little bit more flexibility, I think, in terms of our relations. We have called out the Uyghur situation over there, finally, although it took a lot of lobbying to get that even mentioned in Parliament. So we are willing to talk about things. I'm not sure how willing we are to do things, because post-Brexit, there's that feeling of sort of being isolated from the other superpowers a little bit. And I don't think they want to make any moves that could kind of cause, fraction with Beijing as far as possible.
Right.
But we're certainly aware of it.
I don't see why. I mean, I'm speaking to the converted here, but I don't see why they didn't sort of get a deal done while Nigel was, had President Trump in the White House. They should have utilized that contact and, really taken advantage of their friendship to barter a great deal with America and also with Australia, frankly. I mean, it's a big market out there, I feel like there's so many things that the UK could do. They could still do it. It's just it all comes back to leadership. In all of our countries, we've got a crisis of leadership. You've got sleepy
Absolutely.
Joe Biden, who's the leader of the free world, falling asleep at these the conferences.
And Boris too, apparently. I mean, I saw a picture of him with his eyes closed, so.
I mean, the man's a meme. Like, it is an embodiment. Just as Hillary Clinton was the embodiment of the establishment in 2016, so is Joe Biden in symbolizing the degradation of the West, basically.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but because, it was encouraging seeing the election results in the USA, because I think it's a sign of things to come, as Kamala Harris said. And I think that the Republicans will continue to take back the House and the Senate.
Yeah.
I mean,
Pelosi's just announced she's not going to rerun. So there's good signs. There's good signs over there.
Yeah.
There's a lot coming out. But, it's funny because, speaking of Jack Posobiec, he's going to be coming over to the conference now. I mean, he tweeted, can't remember how he phrased it now, but he basically said, watch out for 3 a.m. And he's talking about the electric voting machines, obviously.
That's right.
And I was just thinking, if that tweet was made a few years ago, everyone would be like, conspiracy. Now it's almost just an accepted, that's what's going to happen. They're going to try and rig it at 3 a.m. I mean, this is meant to be the preeminent superpower that runs half of the world, which is in control of our gas and oil for pretty much every country.
Yeah.
And we're talking about election corruption as though it's just a stated fact. I mean, that's scary. It's really scary.
I was listening to Tucker Carlson talk about it, and it was really funny because they were closing down the biggest voting center until the morning for votes. And then he ended the statement by saying, basically, apparently they have to check how many votes they need to win. And I was just like, God, Yeah, and it's a sad
Yeah,
joke. He
it's,
wasn't laughing. He was just like, oh, that's where things are
well,
at.
yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You can pretty much state anything now, and it's going to have some grain of truth. And that is a problem, I think, as well for us on our side, because there is so much misinformation out there. There is a lot of misinformation that circulates. Because everything's so crazy, it's almost like, well, people will believe half of it anyway, because why not? One thing's happening, another thing's happening. And the problem with that, misinformation, much as they try to shut it down, for them it's a great tool because it means we're not focusing on the real issues. Right now, everybody should be watching COP26. Like, the world shouldn't even be focusing on anything else because the next thing that's coming is the climate agenda. That's the real biggie. That's the next one.
Yeah,
And that's something people are still talking about. COVID. We're beyond COVID. The next lockdowns, they might be COVID, they might be climate, you know. And I think that's the next issue to discuss. And it's interesting actually to get your perspective on this because you guys are so close to China geographically, comparatively to us. I mean, China, if we're really going to talk about climate change, we're going to acknowledge that it's, you know, a fact, as they like to say. I would probably dispute that quite a bit, but
yeah,
let's call it a fact for now.
yeah,
If it really was a fact, man-made climate change is all coming from China.
yeah. A third of the world's emissions. In 18 days, they emit what Australia does in a year.
Yeah, I think we contribute about 1% to the global carbon emissions in the UK, and yet we're the front runner for net zero. I mean,
Ah, God, yeah, we're 0.3%. So it's like, for God's
even
sake,
less.
yeah, what they want to do, man, what they want to do is a net zero thing here as well. The last election we had was in 2019, and
Mm,
the Labor Party had such a crazy manifesto that they took to the election, crazy policies which would have basically guaranteed net zero a bit sooner than that.
yeah,
And, they lost the unlosable election. It was almost Trumpian. All the polling
yeah,
was saying they were going to win and this and that. And they ended up losing it. And the lesson we got from it was that the Australian people, we have a very big country. We rely on diesel. We rely on industry and mining and all of that. We didn't want to end those industries. The Australian people overwhelmingly rejected the manifesto based on climate. That was the lesson. Now, Scott Morrison, who won the unwinnable election, he won it. He has adopted the Labor Party's policies. And so now
right,
we're in a situation where it's like, okay, both major parties are selling us out, just like with Brexit, as you guys would
sure,
have seen over there. I
yeah,
think you guys had something like, was it like 3/4 of your MPs voted against Brexit in one of the initial votes in the Parliament? Yeah, and they didn't represent their constituents. We've got a similar situation here where Canberra or 10 Downing Street, like with you guys, Canberra for us is such a, like the uptake that they took to the vaccine, they're almost at 100% double dose.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
they're insane.
yeah,
But the good thing about, I'm a solutions guy. The good thing
yeah,
about Australia compared to the UK is we have, one of the world's most robust preference systems where if the first guy doesn't get the vote, the second guy will get it. Whereas over
yeah,
the UK, it's a first past the post.
yeah.
Yeah, a little bit more
Oh,
difficult.
sorry,
But
no, we don't. We have it. Sorry, if you're talking about the UK, yeah.
yeah,
So
the UK.
we're not, because obviously we're constituency based, so it's just based on the map. I don't know if you've ever watched our election over here. It's a bit complicated, but um, people are trying to change the election system over here at the moment. It's something that's being looked at, but for now, we've still got the old style.
Would you like to see something a bit more like? I mean, don't get me wrong. The House of Lords absolutely needs to be reformed to be a bit more like
Yeah,
our Senate, where it's like
yeah,
we've got like 12. We've got 12 senators per state. The
yeah.
House of Lords, the way it's appointed, it's like 200, 300 years old. It's ridiculous what you guys are
It's
working
kind of crazy. I mean, we have, so in the House of Lords, well, from my Christian perspective, I think one good thing is it used to be the Lord's spiritual. Um, they would generally kind of clap back against anything that was, too off the wall. But now you've got Justin Welby preaching climate change as a doctrine and preaching the vaccine as a sin, more or less. And not going to claim that Pope Francis is very far behind him, but
Yeah.
we're we're looking at something over here where, like you said, the Lords is kind of, it is the elite. Now the elite over here used to be quite set in their ways, which was always a good thing because they didn't want things to change for them. Now they're seeing that change as a way to monopolize even further. So we're having a shift in that narrative. I went to a talk, was it last week or the week before? It was last week, from Lord Sumption. You might know as the former, it was the foremost legal authority over here. So he was on the Supreme Court as one of the judges. He gave a good speech, actually, talking predominantly against, some of the restrictions and that kind of thing over here. He says a lot of things I don't agree with. He was a Remainer. He sort of pro other issues that I wouldn't agree with him on. But on this, we had something in common. And then he started talking about climate change. And he was saying, well, do we actually need a different kind of democracy? Do we actually need something that unites all the nations together to face the greatest crisis that humanity has ever known? I think, oh, here we go. Even this guy, we thought we had him. We thought we had him, talking about lockdowns and that kind of thing. He gets it. He knows what's going on. He's been there. He's seen it. Even he is sold into this narrative that unless we all unite together and go under one global leadership, we're not going to find a solution for climate change.
God.
Did you see that thing in the Daily Mail about the leaked document from the UN saying that climate hasn't risen for 15 years?
No, I didn't.
So that just came out yesterday. So I'm gonna share that a bit more later on, I think, today.
Yeah, but, please do. Definitely send it.
Yeah, it's a good one.
The climate crisis could be solved a lot easier than they're giving credit. I mean, in Australia, we have a 15-year moratorium preventing us from using nuclear energy, which is insane because we have like 40% of the world's nuclear uranium, basically.
Yeah,
and we're not using it. It's absolute madness. And so one of the things that a lot of the parties here, a lot of the minor parties are pushing is for that solution.
Of course, because it's huge wealth creation. It's huge wealth creation. I mean, why not? Why not?
Absolutely. I mean, like, I'd shake on it with any of the lefties. I'd say, hey, you want to close down coal? No worries. Let's phase it out. We'll do it by 2030. We'll uptrain all of the, as much as possible, as much as we can. And if not, we can offer fair compensation, just like Thatcher did. We can train them into the nuclear industry and whatever suits them. Free education for it, whatever, no worries. We'll phase it out, and that way we can have base load energy from nuclear and go from there. But
the point is, I don't like her, but I agree with Greta on this point. It is all blah blah blah, and I hate hearing her say that, but it's true. It's funny when she was making that speech. Disagree with every word she said except one line, which is that build back better, blah blah blah, net zero, blah blah blah. It's true. It's not true from the perspective she's looking at it, but it's true because if they cared about the agenda in the same way that supposedly her and the other youth activists care about, they could have done something about it a long time ago. Because the reality is, they're looking at this from a money perspective, right? So if you phase out coal, you phase out fuel, you have to replace it with something that makes you even more money. And that's what they're doing. Electric cars, I mean, that's one of the biggest scams we've seen in a long time. I mean, come on. The creation of an electric car creates more carbon emission than a fuel car will use pretty much in a lifetime. So, plus it's all made in China, where they're using coal anyway.
And also the slavery used, especially in places like Afghanistan, to actually mine the lithium in order for the batteries. I mean, they don't think.
But we don't care about humans anymore. We don't care about them. We don't care about humans, Boris said as a joke recently, I don't know if you picked that up, he was talking to some school kids about climate change. So maybe we should start feeding some of the humans to the animals. And it's meant to be a joke, but it just sounded so creepy, no one laughed. Even the kids weren't laughing. It was it's horrendous. It's horrendous.
There's some great photos. There are some great photos of Boris talking to kids. God, he's a funny guy.
Another meme.
I'm conscious of time. I don't want to go too long for your sake. This is the start of your day. But no,
Yeah.
look, it's a pleasure chatting with you, man. It's really interesting to hear how things are going over there. I want to see people like Farage do a lot more over there. I know he's obviously on the news
He's on his
now, and
yeah, he's on TV. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, he's got his own show. He's the biggest name on GB News, and he's doing a great job there. And you've got to make a bit of money as well. That's
Yeah.
cool. But I'd love to see him pick up another project and run with it. Brexit was
Hmm.
great, but there's still more
Well,
work
look,
to do.
that's what we're trying to do with this conference. We're trying to create another Brexit moment because let's be real, no one's been, outside the political stage for the best part of a year and a half. I mean, I was up at a Conservative conference. It was big, but turnout was down there. People haven't really had the chance to get that feeling that we did during Brexit. I mean, those rallies were something else, man. We haven't had anything like that over here for a long time. Um, I think in the US you had that with Trump, obviously, and that's what Nigel does so well. He connects with the crowd in a similar kind of way, and I think that's what we want to do. It's going to be stage, it's going to be thousands in the audience. It's going to be cameras. It's going to be action, because I think that's what we're missing over here. We've been completely restricted to Twitter. I mean, I live in a Twitter bubble. For the last year, I've been doing most of my networking through Twitter, through WhatsApp, through whatever. It's all been digital mediums. Getting back to actually seeing people live, that's going to be the key. I wrote about this in the article as well. Social distancing. Social distancing has been one of their biggest tactics, even though it's not talked about as much. Because as soon as you start separating people together, you can talk, but no one's doing anything. Every resistance movement starts with a group of people in a room. And until you get everybody together, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm so keen on capitalizing on the lessons I can from you guys, going into our winter next year.
Yeah.
As things start to get colder in May,
Yeah.
but yeah, absolutely. Seeing what sort of conferences we can do here to sort of get people of like minds in the same room, so we can action some stuff. Where
You said Nigel's coming out soon as well?
yeah, wink, wink, nod, nod. Relatively soon, early next year.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. Hopefully, he doesn't get stuck in the UK for whatever reason. Who knows? They might change the rules so that you have to have a booster, or who knows? But also in Australia, we've obviously got to sort out, make sure we can guarantee that the conferences won't be shut down.
Of course, yeah.
But no, I'm very excited about that. It's going to set the country on fire. We had Milo Yiannopoulos out in the country here, and it basically set the country
Another
on
great
fire.
speaker. Yeah.
Yeah, he's great. He was actually one of the people that converted me from a lefty to a right winger. Between him and Ben Shapiro. Yeah, between him and Ben Shapiro, he was talking with. There was one specific video of him talking with this campus lefty in the UK, and I think it was in the UK. Yeah, and he was talking with her, and said something like, only 13% of women in the UK identify as a feminist, because it's become a mean, man-hating religion, basically. And it's not about equality anymore. And I was like, wow, there's something I'm missing here. And so
it's funny. That's maybe the last point I'm going to make. But a lot of these people in the music industry, right? They were the punk rockers. They were the anti-establishment back in the 60s, 70s, 80s. Man, they're tied into the narrative now. It's funny looking at them. Did you see Bon Jovi? Did you see that thing with his concert? So, everybody has to be vaccinated. He's double vaxxed, and then he catches COVID, And it's so funny just seeing these guys in absolute denial. We've got a few. We've got Eric Clapton. We've got Madonna, I think it was, speaking out the other day. So there's a few of them waking up, but it's just so funny seeing all these people, because I was big on my music, I was big on my rock scene and all that kind of thing. And no one's anti-establishment anymore. Everything goes in cycles. Like you said, you started out as a lefty, you come around. I think for everyone else, it's going the other way. Everybody just seems to be going around this big wheel at the moment. But I
think it's just people defending the establishment. They have made them very rich and powerful. But I do see, in Australia, we've seen a massive growth in alternative media over the course of the last 2 years because of the pandemic.
Right.
Australia has been lagging behind the UK and the USA in recent with the sort of the decline of society. So we didn't go through in the USA, their channels really grew in 2016 onwards. We didn't get that till 2020, 2021. So we've had
Yeah.
all these channels just grow rapidly because of the virus. So we've been playing catch up. But the mainstream media, they're not getting. We don't lose followers to the mainstream media. That doesn't happen. So
Yeah.
that's what encourages me, because they've become quite loyal to us in a very amazing way, and we've been seeing protests in Australia that we've never seen before.
You've got
Australians
Sky
don't.
covering. You've got Sky covering some of that as well, right? So they cover some of the protests
Wow, that's awesome.
over
Is
in
that you
Australia,
mean
right?
you mean
No,
you
no,
mean
I
yeah
mean in
yeah
Australia. Sky,
oh,
yeah,
Sky Australia. I wasn't sure if you
yeah,
meant
yeah.
Sky UK. Yeah,
Oh
no,
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 I love it.
Sky over here is a liberal mess where they've just suggested we start eating bugs and
Yeah,
mealworms, I believe. Yeah,
yeah. You guys have the crazy Sky. No, no,
we've got
our
crazy
one
Sky.
our one are sympathetic, but they are becoming a lot more left wing over time. They've been
Yeah,
put heavily because it's one of Murdoch's babies, so
yeah.
it's been attacked heavily by some of the left wingers. Sometimes rightly so, sometimes wrongly so. But we
Well,
don't have
we've
many
got
sort
Talk
of
TV, which is going to be kind of launching over the next year. That's Murdoch backed, so it'll be interesting to see which way that one swings. It's meant to be kind of a kind of competitor to GB, but we'll see which way it goes. So
So who backs GB then? I thought he backed GB.
no, he doesn't actually. So a lot of people thought that it's private ownership at the moment. So it's
Right.
I think that's why they're allowed to get away with a little bit more. It's not Murdoch, as far as we're aware. But I'm
All right. All right.
sure he's gonna chip in somewhere.
It'd be funny if he had both and he's just sort of pitting them against each other.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
Competition
Yeah.
is good. Yeah, competition's good. Joseph, thank you so much for your time, man. I'm looking forward to the next time we do this. But yeah, guys,
Yeah,
if you're
definitely.
listening, go follow Joseph now. Click that drop down at the top left and follow him now. I'm trying to build his channel to 1,000 in one episode.
That would
I
be
think we'll
great.
go five. But no, thanks so much, brother. It's a pleasure talking with conservatives around the globe to hear what sort of struggles you're going through and see what challenges are happening. So thanks.
100%. No, great stuff, mate. Thanks for having me on. And look, we'll do it again soon when I've got some updates.
Awesome, awesome. Good luck in Wales. When are you going?
So that's on the 9th of November. I'm probably going to live stream from there. So if you want to alert everyone to that as well, we're going to do quite a big protest there. So that should be good.
Awesome.
That should be good fun. Yeah,
Absolutely, we'll do. I'll
great
keep an eye
stuff.
out. Thanks so much, man. I'll see you when I see you.
Take care, mate. God
All
bless.
right. Ciao.